Despite Medea's being called a monster, known for being a murderer, and known for killing her own children, readers seem to quickly grasp onto the notion that there is something universal in Medea's rage and understandable that provokes her to overthrow social norms of her time, oppression, and even reject her past self in order to recreate an identity and reclaim her power. Medea is a mythical figure who reappears throughout the past centuries in different iterations. Medea shows up as a symbol of overthrown oppression throughout history in various forms over and over again. I was curious about her story and what it was about her that resonates with people and has turned her into an icon of feminism. In my research, I began to understand more about this myth's origin and influence and researched the concept of female rage and mother rage through Medea. So I began my research by looking at Seneca's 5th century time period. And there was an article about Roman marriage and divorce laws around the time of Seneca. And in it, it explains that the children stayed with their father to assure his family line in the case of divorce, and mothers were forced to leave the home. In this context, Creon's banishing Medea to exile is traditional and legal, but also helps demonstrate Medea's total helplessness as a wife and a mother when those roles are taken from her. Why she'd want to retaliate and remind herself and Jason that she has power becomes clear in her frustration. Also, Medea wasn't an arranged political marriage like most marriages of the time, and most marriages of the Elizabethan era, shown in revenge plays. This also makes her a little more relatable to our time. Because her father also didn't pay a dowry, she and Jason married against their family's wills. She felt she was owed something when he left her. He couldn't pay a dowry back to her father. She had killed him. And it was not a marriage that people were blessing. So she took what she thought she was owed when she left as well, which adds to her revenge. These past experiences together complicate their separation. I wrote a lot of articles that discuss the influence of Seneca and Medea on the characters and tropes that influenced Elizabethan revenge dramas, and playwrights like Shakespeare, Kidd, and Marston. The female prototypes of these plays were usually one of a type, either a Madonna or a Medea. And then I researched this dichotomy throughout history and how those adaptations have influenced art today. Medea's influence was very present during the Elizabethan era, and revenge tragedies were all the rage. Revenge tropes were popular ways to criticize and discuss the imbalance of power in wars, clans, and the church. The revenge tragedies were also stories that people told orally in families or clans to display prowess and bravery and traits that were supposedly manly that they were supposed to emulate. The figure of Medea gives birth to disturbingly independent female subjectivity through revenge, and so provides a model for active female revengers in early modern scripts. So some of them you do see taking action, like Tamara and Belle Imperia. And there's a couple, then usually they fall into one of those two categories. Medea also showed up often in the early 1900s in Britain during the suffrage movement as a feminist symbol of overthrowing oppression. Prior to that, Medea was banned from the stage in Britain because of the depictions of infanticide. Only adaptations that changed the ending of the play were permitted. So there were also a lot of adaptations where Medea was made into a hero or a healer, or she wasn't guilty of crimes, or Jason was to blame. And then this happened again in the 60s and 70s. After Medea became an iconic figure for the women's movement, the symbol was credited with changing divorce laws in Britain to be more favorable toward mothers in divorce and more sympathetic toward women accused of killing children in cases of mental illness and abuse. Later on, I found evidence of Medea's myth being used in art, and a specific case of a Croatian artist living in the UK where she does a live performance around Medea and motherhood that I talk about in my paper. She talks about the isolation and social expectations of being a mother, especially a foreigner, as Medea was. Adaptations of Medea have highlighted themes such as the struggles of oppressed racial groups, immigrants, exploited colonials, and women. Contemporary works of art broaden Medea to represent the exploitation of less developed countries and the marginalization of various populations. So a lot of adaptations. My original idea for the paper came after reading the novel Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder that came out in 2021. I was originally struck by parallels between the modern protagonist in the novel and Medea. And they both discuss similar themes of female rage, in particular that of mothers. Medea's is an old story, but similar situations exist today, even if we don't identify them as nearly as extreme, in which women are isolated, social expectations make parenting difficult. The mothers often pay a price, sacrificing careers or dreams at the expense of the family. They feel forced to choose and a loss of identity. Society can make it hard to find balance, and that fuels a lot of deep anger for many women. Even today, there's something about Medea's blatant rejection of social expectations, her rebelling against the patriarchy, and showing her anger for what it was, that resonates. Medea is more complex than she's credited for. After researching, I saw Medea show up through art many times throughout history, and especially during the clusters at wrought times of social change, which I mentioned. So my point shifted from mother's rage a little bit from societal expectations to include Medea's influence on feminism and history and her, the mythology used to defeat various oppressions. So thanks for watching my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it.